Y'all see why I don't like doing those videos about talking about mental health and shit. Like, I know I'm a mental health activist, but I actually don't like talking about that shit. But anyway, hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So if you have accepted that you would, feel free to stay and then make sure that you hit subscribe and turn on post notification so that you're notified every single time I upload. Yeah, so in this video I'm just going to be sharing with you my experience with therapy. Start with the in-person one and then we'll go on to the online, because I had to do it online because of Panini. But anyways, the first time I actually started seeking out therapy was obviously when I had the diagnosis for depression and anxiety. 17, if I remember. Initially was actually put on the waiting list for talking therapists within the NHS, and that wasn't going to work out for me first of all, because the waiting time was at least about 6 to 18 months before you can get an actual therapist. And I pretty much was like, that ain't gonna work. When the people within the services that actually provide the service, like the therapy services, talking therapies within the NHS, actually reached out to me. From what I remember, what they explained to me was that I would have a virtual, at the time it wasn't ideal, because they were like, you'd have a virtual session and I'm not really gonna know which day. Like, I'll get the date and time sent over to me. So like, I'm gonna be choosing which dates and time I want, or speaking to the therapist themselves and scheduling myself in. The cost, I think the cost was going to be like £20 per session, and they were basically just going to limit me to 6 sessions, right? I was like, no. The waiting time put me off. I'm not gonna lie, the waiting time was the main thing that actually put me off, because I was just like, you know, I'm not gonna do this. So it's not even only just on my own, like mom as well, like she was the one that's helping me like look for it and all that whatnot. We decided both that like that wasn't ideal, so we actually started looking for a therapist for me, like in person. I went to about 3 different therapists before I actually found one that I sort of clicked with, to be fair. I went to like different therapists, so I went to 2 male therapists and 1 female therapist, and one of them lived way too close to home where we were living before we moved, and I didn't like that, and I just didn't like her way of the way she spoke and what she was choosing to target on focusing on, because I didn't want to focus on that. Because at the time she kept going on about, because at the time that was when I'd been kicked out of uni, so she kept referring back to that whole business of me going back to doing nursing and this and that and whatnot, and I'm just like, you don't want to fucking talk about that. First of all, like, that's not actually the reason why I'm here. Like, that's not the main cause of my depression. First of all, I didn't want to talk about that. And then we just didn't gel, basically. We didn't click. Yeah. And then the next thing was the other therapist, the male therapist. That one we just didn't get on. Like, there was something about him that reminded me of someone I had encountered in my life that just didn't click with me, and I was just like, no, this ain't gonna work at all. And then the next one that I actually got on-ish with was a male, and I'm going to mention race purely because for me, in my case, in terms of like the therapists that I've seen or that I've been to, and the ones I've actually stuck with, race actually did play a huge factor. Race and gender played a huge factor in this, so I'm not bringing this up to be like, oh, blah blah, like this race is better than this. No, for my own purposes and for my own reasons for why I was going to therapy, I needed a specific person, and I didn't know this at the time when I was doing therapy in person, but I needed them to be a specific gender and a specific race. With that one, it was still 6 sessions that he had been like, they're supposed to read that they have a very weird process, because to me it didn't make sense to me that, like, how are you going to just say I'm only going to have 6 sessions with you? Like, I need someone on cycle that I'm going to be like, I'm going to go to therapy for maybe like 3 months, and then I'm going to take a pause because my brain would just start going through too much shit, and then I'll come back to you again. That's the type of person I needed. So he knew that, and I'd explained it to him, and mom had also spoken to him, and he was like, no, usually we do just have 6 sessions, and then after that, I'm not gonna lie, I've not looked much into the reasons why they do the whole 6 sessions business, but I just find it very odd. And he knew that like that whole 6 sessions thing wasn't gonna work for me, so it's like, no, you can be a rolling client, so you can basically just have your sessions for however, you can have me as your therapist for however long you need me to be. So I think I had about 7 or 8 sessions with him. if I remember. I'm gonna be real honest with you, like therapy, if you're not ready for it, it's like it's a whole thing. Like anyways, I thought I had experienced therapy when I was going to this in-session, like in-person one, until I actually did the like online one. That was a whole different thing. But anyways, so with this one, like, yeah, we started out and then we're talking about certain things and whatnot, but then I still found that like within myself, I wasn't mentally there to actually be saying everything, like honestly, even talking to him about, bringing up to the therapist about. He was a guy, like I said. And I didn't realize at the time that like this was actually something I needed to take into consideration, right? So yeah, we had the sessions and all that stuff, and then we did discuss certain things, and for some reason like something just didn't click in one of the sessions. And I think it was again the way he was talking, and it's this thing with me that like keeps coming up every single time, that like the way someone talks to me, if you talk to me a certain way because of certain issues that's happened, I switch off and then I go back. It like sends me back into like that mindset that I was at that certain time. So then to me it stops being something that's helpful to me, and it just starts being something that's more, that puts me all more on the like defensive side, that like the feeling of needing to protect myself. So that happened, and then I never went back to him, basically. Fast forward to this was like what, I think when I actually started therapy was like 2018. Was it 2018 or end of 2017? I think it was end of 2017. Yeah, I think it was end of 2017. 2018, 2019, 2020. Nothing. I did not go to therapy. 2020, sorry. The end of 2020. Hate talking about this shit. I don't particularly remember what exactly triggered it off. I do know what triggered it off, but I don't want to give away too much with the consideration of that. I still want to have boundaries and stuff like that, and that's something that I discussed with my current therapist about me having boundaries. But anyway, so I know I triggered it off. Every time around like October, November, I get triggered off. Man, I'm not gonna discuss that. Anyway, every time around that time, basically from like November to February, it's a really shitty time. It's a really hard time for me. It's a very, very shitty time for me. Like, yeah, there's just, I don't know how exactly potentially I might be able to work through making sure that that time of the year is just not awful. It's not the like seasonal depression and shit and all that stuff. No, it's not even that. I know the reason why, but I just don't want to share with you. This time I actually decided to share with my mum the reasons why certain things were happening and whatnot, because the previous years I had not decided to share it with her at all, because it was mostly coming from fear of judgment. But anyway, there's that. And then we then decided, once again, mommy to the rescue. I decided that I want to go to therapy again, but I was just in the middle of panini, you see. So in the middle of panini, me decided to go to therapy. It's like, okay, so how are we going to do this? Because clearly the one before, that was like now 2 years past, I'm not even going to want to try and start sessions with him. So in comes BetterHelp, right? So I don't know how many people I'd seen talking about BetterHelp on YouTube and stuff like that. So I was like, what the hell is this? So I was like, oh, let me look into it. So I filled out the whole form and all that stuff and whatnot. And then it came to the part where they were asking me, do I want my therapist to be male or female? I never thought about this before. Like, literally, when I was looking for a therapist, like earlier on, like in the beginning, that having a certain gender and a certain race would actually play a big part in terms of whether I attend the sessions or not, if I stick to it, or I actually follow through on what I'm meant to be working on. Anyways, I then selected that I wanted my therapist to be female and I wanted them to be black. My previous in-person therapist was actually a white male. I don't think that was ever going to work. Like, for me, ever. I don't even think it was ever going to work. I don't think it was going to work even if it was an Indian male, a black male, Latino male. If it was a guy, it was never going to work. If it was a man, a male therapist for me was never going to work. Also, on the female side, it was never going to work if they were not black. Ever. It was not going to work. Like, I only realized that when I started my sessions. I did my registration and all that stuff, and then it takes like about less than 24 hours. They say 28 to 48 hours for you to be matched up with a therapist. Because also this is virtually and stuff like that. People are in different time zones and whatnot. And that's something I had to take into consideration. But it worked out well because we're in the middle of panini and we're on lockdown all at home anyway. So, man. Within the form of you kind of specify like what type of therapist you want. Like if they what specialism? Is it specialism? What they specialize in, basically. Whether like family, trauma, this and that, and whatnot. So yeah, so I did all that, like the form. It is quite an intensive form. Like there's quite a lot of questions on it, but it makes sense. Like it helps you to be paired up with the right person, to be fair. So yeah, I filled out my form and all that stuff, and then I got paired up. I think it was like by the next day in the afternoon, I got like an email confirming who my therapist is and all that stuff, and it was like, oh yeah, you can get hold of them through your phone and all that stuff, because you can download the app on your phone. You can do on the desktop, but I just download it on my phone, and then like I could text them and stuff like that, anything that I'm thinking. So I had access to my therapist like 24/7, so I could basically send them a quick message and they could respond and be like, okay, would you want to touch on this in the next session? Or they could respond to me in that moment and be like, okay, maybe think about this, think about that, blah blah, that kind of thing. But obviously that came as we had more and more sessions. In the initial part, in the first, like I say, 2 weeks, that literally, first 2 weeks, in the first month, should I say, that basically would have been more of them just being like, she's taking a note of it, and then they'll bring it up in the like session and stuff like that. So I opted for having my sessions once a week. Even when I was in person, I was having my sessions once a week. You could have them twice a week if you wanted to, but like for me, at that time I was just like, once a week is enough. Like, because I knew what was going to be happening, I was like, once a week is enough. So with the first session and stuff like that, what tends to happen is usually they kind of just give you free reign to talk about whatever you want to talk about. They'll ask you questions as it goes along. Yes, the questions of how was your childhood, it seems like it's a movie type of therapy. Like it's like a presentation of therapy through film, but that actually does happen. Like they will ask you how your childhood was. So that's what I'm saying. Like if you're not ready for therapy, like don't even invest any money into it. Like you only get back what you put into it. I mean, there's nothing you can do to prepare yourself for therapy. I'm not gonna lie. Like I can't even say that like you can do this, you can read up on this. No, there's nothing you can do. It's just a case of that. Are you ready to be honest with yourself? Literally, that's what therapy is. It's you being honest with yourself, like not even trying to filter anything, because in filtering something you're basically just prolonging hurting yourself. Like it doesn't work, it doesn't help with anything. So unless if you're 100% clued in on saying that you are ready to stop lying to yourself, because that's what usually tends to happen, like you realize about how many things you're lying to yourself about, or how many things you had been stuffing under or like trying to run away from. At the first session, and then obviously you kind of discuss, you can say generally like what's the reason why you're in therapy, or what's the current issues you're having and stuff like that and whatnot. I don't really like clearly remember in my head how like my first virtual session went and stuff like that, but I do remember like what I mentioned, but I don't remember the questions she was asking me. So you have that first session, and one thing I can say is that when it comes to therapy, be prepared to cry. I've not been someone that had been comfortable with the emotion of crying, expressing that emotion of crying. That has never been my comfort zone ever at all. It sounds weird saying comfort zone, but like I mean that emotion made me very, 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 very uncomfortable. But with therapy, that like shit goes away. To be fair, I'm not gonna lie. If you are gonna be honest with yourself, I'm just gonna say, if you're gonna be honest with yourself. And for some reason, I felt more comfortable crying in someone that like I don't know, as opposed to crying in people that I do know. That's the thing. Like I know, like it sounds like a cliche. The whole thing of like it's easier to tell a stranger all your secrets and shit like that than people that you know. It is very true, because like this person doesn't know anything about you, so you can tell them anything you want. And because of the fact that I didn't have to see my therapist in person, and there was basically no potential of me ever bumping into her or anything like that, I didn't have to worry about any of the shit that I told her. So I'm just like, I could just say anything and everything I wanted without feeling judged about it, because this person was there to try and help me, basically. Does that make sense? Because when it comes to like sharing things, it might be like you're sharing things with like family or friends and stuff like that. It might seem as if they're trying to help you, but it's more from a judgmental perspective, as opposed to trying to help you, because of the fact that they have a perception of who they think you are. Like, no one ever knows who you truly are, to be fair, but they have a perspective of who they think you are or how they think you should be. So they might end up imposing their own beliefs onto you, when it's like, no, I literally just only want you to listen to me. I don't need to hear everything about something. So I had comfort in that, in the fact that like, this is a stranger, the person doesn't know me, doesn't know anything about me, so there's no like preconceived notions or anything like that. So I could literally just say anything and everything that I wanted, and that's literally what I did. And I will not lie to you, it was hard. It was fucking brutal, like very, very brutal. I never knew I had that many tears in my eyeballs. It sounds stupid saying that. I've never cried so much in my entire life. But I do have to say, going to therapy has actually made me more comfortable with expressing my emotions. Because I'd been... Ooh, nope. Why am I making this video? Yeah, so I had like... I could say before, I used to be like the type of person that basically didn't validate their emotions, to say like they're relevant. Certain shit happened, okay, that led me to being that way. Anyways, we're not going to discuss that. This video is not about that, and I don't think I'll ever share anything about that ever. Like, don't bother asking me about that. No. Anyway, like, seriously, don't bother asking me. I'll never answer that question, ever. Like, whatever happened. Like I said, something that my therapist told me that I need to work on is boundaries. So, I'm using you guys, I'm very sorry, but I'm using you as a way to try and practice me setting boundaries and stuff like that. Because I feel like sometimes I tend to overshare, and then I end up thinking that like, did I really need to share about that? Because like, I had one session per week, and I had those sessions over the course of 3 months. And obviously this was during the middle of Panini and all that stuff, and we would like set up, because she was based in the US, so we'd like set up the times and all that stuff. Like at the end of each session, I would look through the calendar, or I could basically look through her calendar, because I had access to her calendar, and see when she was and was not available, and then I could choose the time that suits me based obviously on time zone and stuff like that. But she was like very accommodating, because there was different times when it might be that I needed an emergency session, and she'd be like, okay, cool, fine. I basically was going through CBT, which is basically cognitive behavioral therapy, where you basically are aiming at looking at certain behaviors that you, oh, I need to stop. You'll be looking basically at certain behavior patterns, or certain behaviors that I might be doing, and trying to work on my way towards either finding the reasons why I do them, and working my way towards changing them, or working on a way to make them more on the positive side, if that makes sense. So that's basically what I was doing for like those 3 months. Some of the exercises I kind of felt quite stupid, because I had the homeworks, like I basically had homework each and every single session, and also I had a notebook and stuff like that to be writing down the things that she told me that I need to work on, for like what she thinks I should be doing. So that form of therapy for me is definitely what I needed, and I still think that I need CBT probably for the rest of my life. But like seriously, I think I actually need CBT for the rest of my life. But yeah, so we went through that, and I had homework each and every single session, and she would ask me if I worked on it or if I didn't, and like I said, I was literally honest with her whether I worked on it. If she told me to do something, if I didn't, if I felt weird about it, I'll tell her that, like, no, I didn't do it because that made me feel like I felt stupid doing it, or that made me feel uncomfortable or something like that. So I had that certain level of comfortability with her that I didn't have before. So it's something that like the whole thing with race and gender, I only realized during when I was with this therapist, that it played a huge role. And I never thought of it before. So if you are considering going to therapy, that might be something that you might want to consider, if like you're not clicking with someone, because I feel like she could understand where I was coming from in terms of some of the things that I brought up. Like if it was to be a white woman, but I'm sorry, like they literally could not relate to anything I was saying, so that literally felt like a waste of my time. Like, not an emotional roller coaster. I don't think I ever had a session when I didn't cry. Like, I don't mean like cry like a little, like crocodile tear, or like a little tiny drop. No, I literally mean like bawling my eyes out to the point of like my eyes are swollen. and she'll literally be like, okay, I'm gonna recommend that you go take a bath or go have some food, go watch some TV, don't stay in your room. That's basically been my experience with therapy, and I am going to be going back to therapy, and I am going to be matching up with that same therapist again, because that's the thing about mental health. You can be matched up with the same therapist if there's availability. And I don't even care. I will wait until she's available. Like, I'll wait until when she has availability for me. If I want to like reactivate my subscription, all that stuff. Oh, the thing with the price is it's like £45 per session. It was the same in person and online. Like in person was £45, online is £45 per session. So price difference, not that much different. It was the same thing. The thing I can say is like when you're given homework for therapy, do it. Like I already told you, like you only get from therapy what you put out. Like if you're not gonna give yourself honestly to it, you're not gonna be honest about everything that you are struggling with. What's the point? You might as well just be throwing your money in the bin. Like that's just the way I see it. If you're not gonna be 100% honest and unfiltered, like why are you filtering yourself for? Like what's the actual reason you're filtering yourself in therapy? It doesn't make sense because you're there for you. So why do you feel like you need to be considerate of somebody else's feelings? Whose feelings are you considering? The therapist doesn't know you. The therapist has no investment in your life. Like, they don't know you. Like, there's no, oh, I might hurt their feelings. Oh, this is not. Like, they don't know you. Crying is part of the thingy. What do you call it? The terms and conditions. Like, stupid amounts of crying. And realizing shit about yourself. Like, realizing shit about yourself has never been fun. I'm not gonna lie. Like, especially when you're realizing about like how flawed you are as a person, it's never been fun. But at least it's better to know which parts of you are flawed than to be pretending going through life as if you're like a perfect person and all that stuff, and trying to be like nitpicking and pointing out others' flaws and stuff like that. Like when you realize that you're flawed, you give people a leeway, okay? You realize like when doing certain shit, you start realizing like maybe there's a little bit more to that than just what you're seeing in person. Like there's a little bit more to it than what you're seeing in that current time. It might be a reaction to something. It's not a response, it's just a reaction to something. But you never know. But like, yeah. But yeah, so that's basically my experience with therapy. Do I recommend it? Yes. Is therapy for everyone? No, it's not. Like, believe me. I don't think therapy is for everyone. No. I would recommend it. Obviously, like, I'm more of one of those people like try something once and then you can know that if it's for you or not. But some people don't live by that, but that's just what I choose to live by. I'd rather try something once. If I know that it's not for me, then cool. It's not for me, then I don't have to. But therapy is definitely, I can say, it's one thing that I know it's not for everyone. I mean, just like with other things in life, not everything is for everyone. I don't know, maybe it's just because like I'm one of those people that believes that like if you believe something that it's not gonna work, you've already told your brain that it's not gonna work, so it's not going to. So the same thing, if you're taking medication, you've got a headache, you take paracetamol, Tylenol for the American, you take that medication for your headache and you're thinking that, oh, it's not going to work. It won't work because you've already told your brain for it not to work. So even if you take it, the effects of that medication, it won't work. That's my thought process. But obviously, like, that's not the science behind medication, but that's just my inner hippie self, the spiritual side of me and all that stuff. If you feel that this video was informative or beneficial in any way, shape or form, I don't know why I feel weird saying that. Feel free to share, comment, like and subscribe. Like, share whatever you feel might benefit from also watching this video, or anyone that you might think that might be considering to go to therapy, or maybe you might have been considering going to therapy, or you might have been considering signing up your child for therapy. I don't know, but like, yeah, I hope you learned something from this video. I aim and hope that throughout this year I will be doing more videos that relate to mental health and all that stuff. But as you can clearly see, this made me feel very uncomfortable to talk about it because it's too personal. Like, I can talk to you about like my fucking sexual health. I can talk to you about my physical health. My mental health, that one's a tricky one. I can't, like, for some reason, like, that just, it's way too personal for me, basically. But yeah, so yeah, I will see you in the next video. Bye.